Okay, welcome to an episode of Under the Dome. We are now in week 6. Yeah, because we played 5 games and we had a bye, so in week 6. We have a special show for you guys tonight. We're going to do a special podcast here with 2 of our guests who represent the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, and my sidekick over here, Mr. Sean Williams. How you doing tonight, Sean?
Doing fantastic, Alan. It's great to get a win. And no matter how it comes, W is all that matters.
I'll tell you what, don't go to sleep. You know, it doesn't matter how much we're winning by. We're always going to find a way to give the game away and pull it out the last second. So
we're counting on it. Just to keep it.
Yeah.
It's just to keep it interesting for those season ticket holders so they don't get bored.
Yep. Absolutely.
Are we talking the Colts or the Saints? Oh wait, the Colts don't actually stick to in winning the game.
No, they just give it away. All right, Sean.
We are. Our show is brought to you by Fan First Productions, and we thank them for their sponsorship. And you can follow us on Facebook on the Under the Dome podcast Facebook page. You can follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome PO1. And you can also find us on iTunes. And that brings us to our very special guests that we have this evening, the 2 hosts of the Locked On Chiefs podcast in the Kansas City area. And it's very special for me because I'm very pleased to say that these next 2 gentlemen I've worked with for the better part of the past 3 years. Both of them have been somewhat of mentors for me when I write for ProFootballSpot.com as they cover the Chiefs for PFS. We have
Jim Bob.
Yep. My fault. I started the coughing fit.
Yeah, it's contagious.
That's right.
We have from the Locked On Chiefs podcast, we have Chris Clark and Ryan Tracy. A brief intro. Chris has been working for Pro Football Spot, covering the Chiefs for the past 3 years, and been Chiefs fan 20, I believe. And Ryan is an exercise psychologist and strength and conditioning coach. He's covered the Chiefs and the draft for Pro Football Spot as well as the Chiefs. He's a grad of the University of Kansas and proud Jayhawks. He's lived in every one of the AFC West cities up to and including Seattle.
Yeah, man.
And he is also the founder of Rogue Analytics and the host of the Locked On Chiefs podcast as well. Guys, welcome in.
Thank you, y'all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. In case you can't tell, Ryan's a scrawny one, even though he's the strength coach.
I'm just trying to keep up with Chris. Thank you all for having us. We'll just all deal with him for a while.
There you go. So,
well, congratulations, you guys, on your victory this past Sunday over a team that we lost to by a single point in the Raiders, which is a divisional game for you guys. How have y'all seen this season play out for you so far?
How many sides of the coin are there?
Yeah. Honestly, for me at this point, I'm happy being at 3-2 with Jamal Charles starting to get healthy and maybe Justin Houston coming back in the next couple of weeks. If things stay around 500, I think it'll be a very good season for Kansas City.
Yeah, and I got to say, y'all make it hard to I'm rooting for the Saints to pull that one out and give us another L in the Raiders column there.
I hope we don't ruin that for you.
What's the feeling about in the Chiefs fan base regarding this team and regarding Andy Reid?
There's a whole lot of quivering. This team's talented up and down the roster, and sometimes they just can't get out of their own way. The coaching staff's had a couple of issues, and they've been trying to find their way. Have you seen over the last couple of years, like last year, a 1-5 start ended up on a 10-game run? So the fan base is hungry for a win and getting back to those days where they're a perennial contender, and that's really what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I would say the fan base really wants to see them succeed, but they're also starting to question Reed in some regards. They just look like they have at least 1 or 2 games a year where they don't show up for the game at all, and that's something that they got to fix.
I was wondering about that because, before we went on the air, we were talking about the old days and Marty Schottenheimer and so forth. Marty would get you to the playoffs, even get you the number 1 seed and not make it there. And it's been, almost 40 years since the Chiefs won a Super Bowl. I'm not saying that to rub anything in. I'm just pointing that out. But, is it the playoffs a bust for Andy Reid, or is it you can't just make the playoffs? You got to actually do something.
I think this season they have to do something. I think they look at what they have on the team, and if Houston was going to be healthy the whole year, I think it would have changed expectations a little bit even more. But I think that they're looking at it as they need to be AFC Championship game. I think they have the roster that they could do that. You look at what they've done so far. They played a team in Houston that they had beat twice already in Houston, and you're not going to beat a team like that 3 times in a row in their home stadium normally. And then they didn't show up against the Steelers. So the question is, can Andy Reid get the team to show up? And generally speaking, in big games, he does. But they just laid an egg in Pittsburgh.
Well, I hope y'all have at least one more of those games in you, actually.
Well, I wouldn't bet on that, buddy.
Yeah. Arrowhead is probably one of the toughest stadiums in the world to play in. The fan base is unbelievable. It's very much like a college stadium. In fact, if you didn't know better, if this game was played on a Saturday, you would think you were watching Nebraska or Oklahoma play with that sea of red and the tailgate and the way the fans just get into the game, especially when the Chiefs are doing well. So it's going to be a tough matchup for us. Our offense is very much dependent on quick strikes, getting a lot of passing yardage, a lot of big plays out of the offense, and the defense just basically has to hold on, get a couple of key stops, and then that's usually the recipe for the Saints' success. So I don't know how that plays out in Kansas City. What would you say is the strength of your defense?
It's really going to be the speed of the ball. The linebacker level is pretty solid across the board. They're not getting a whole lot of pass rush this year. They've got a really young secondary. Safeties have a lot of experience and are very versatile. You're probably going to see a lot of 3 safety sets against the Saints. They're going to bring one of them down into the box and let them try to corral whatever they're going to try to do across the middle on the low crossers and that kind of thing. And they're going to try to run with you. And I think they're going to try to limit some yards after the catch. So I think what it comes down to is, is Drew Brees looking to throw downfield more, or is he looking to get the ball in the playmakers' hands and let them run for it?
Well, the Saints offense is kind of the way Drew does it. They play 2 different styles at home and on the road. At home, it's like he looks deep first, then underneath, and then the check down. And when he's on the road, he kind of goes back to the opposite. He goes check down, linebacker level, then start looking deep. So, and it's very much predicated on matchups. They try and isolate whatever the weakness is of your defense. If you have a cornerback that struggles on one-on-one coverage, they're going to try and isolate him with a lot of clear-out routes, a lot of single matchups where they think they can win. So, you're going to see in the case of the Chiefs, I think you'll see a lot of Michael Thomas and a lot of Coby Fleener trying to isolate them on the safeties and on whatever weak cornerbacks y'all have.
So you think they're not going to go after Marcus Peters much at all? You think Brees is going to stay away from him?
I think they will. I think they're going to use Cooks a lot as a decoy, try and keep Peters on his side of the field. They'll do a lot of that kind of stuff. Brees isn't going to test him directly. He may send a couple passes his way because I know Peters likes to he's kind of got a lot of Deion Sanders in him. he likes to bait quarterbacks into thinking they've got something they really don't. And I think you'll see Breeze test him a couple of times and see if he can get him to bite on some double moves. But for the most part, I think they're going to go at that other cornerback.
Oh, and he will.
Yeah, I did see that.
Peters will definitely bite on double moves, and he will. He is very aggressive. That is one thing that makes him such a good corner, is his aggression and his ability to read, which I completely agree with. I would think that they would want to stay away from Peters for the most part, and I really don't get why teams are still throwing at him as much as they are. I mean, I understand, sometimes you have to, but, he's got – I think I read a stat today. He's got something like 11 interceptions or 9 interceptions the last 11 games.
Right.
And that's just unreal for a kid that's, basically going into the second or the first half. He's still in the first half of his second year. So I think he's playing very well.
Peters is a guy.
And the good thing about
Peters is a guy that I looked at a lot for the Saints to possibly draft. Would have loved to have gotten him.
Well, the good thing about with the Saints. Oh, I was just going to say, the good thing about the Saints is they have multiple receiving targets. So it's not like you can just put Peters on whoever the Saints number one receiver is. They've got multiple receiving targets. And they do a lot of things with motion and formations and multiple personnel. So, Peters would have to be running all over the field trying to match up with the same guy all game.
Yeah, and that's something that Kansas City doesn't do. Yeah, Ryan was saying the same thing. They don't do that. They don't move Peters. He stays on one side. I have to ask the question. You guys are talking about Drew Brees and him moving the ball around as much and getting the offense going. I have to ask, how has it been over the past – and I can't remember. Has Brees been there 6 or 7 years now? I mean, it's been a while.
10 years. 10 years.
Has it really been 10 years? Okay, yeah. Sorry. I apologize. I knew it had been a while. But how is it that he's been there 10 years? He's done the things he's done, and they just can't get a defense to surround him with. I don't get that. How are they so inept on the other side of the ball?
They do that because defense has not been a priority.
That's $1 million question. The last defensive coordinator who really was able to get that defense to do anything was Greg Williams. And then you had the Bounty Gate stuff, and it kind of unraveled from there. I think in the beginning, from 2006 to 2011, you saw a building of a good defense. And then once Bounty Gate happened, Greg Williams had to go. You saw drafting and poor free agency pickups. That defense just basically fell apart. And you can't – it's been for the past 6 years now. They've never been able to field a competent defense except for that first year at Rob Ryan. And bad defensive coordinator hiring. In many ways, and you guys might remember these teams or not, but in many ways the Saints today are like the San Diego Chargers of Air Coryell era. Fantastic offense when Dan Fouts was there and that offense was clicking, but they never could get a competent defense together. And I think that's where we are right now. It's a very young defense. The bulk of the defense are, either undrafted free agents or second and third year players. Not a whole lot of experience in there. So once again, you're going to have a struggling defense.
Well, and you all benched your big free agent signing from a couple of years ago for Von Bell, right? Is Jarris Byrd still benched?
He is coming back and forth. He is. I think he actually got the start again last week. But yeah, that was that's a $42 million mistake right there with Jarris Byrd.
54.
Mistake.
Even worse.
Yeah. Yeah, he was somebody.
That's nothing, brother. We just released a running back that I did the math on. We were just released a running back who shall remain nameless in CJ Spiller that was paid every snap that he took as a New Orleans Saint. He was paid $46,464.54 every snap for the New Orleans Saints that he took in the game during the season, not even for preseason. He was paid that much for every play.
Well, and you actually give me a good transition point with you bringing up CJ Spiller. One of the things that, and you talked about Eric Coryell when going back to San Diego, that reminds me of Kansas City around 2003 with the Dick Vermeil offense, and they just couldn't get a defense. But my question is do you think that those quick strike type offenses, like what the Saints have and what the Chiefs had back then, do you think that lends itself to not having a good defense because they're not getting enough rest?
It calls for a whole different kind of defensive philosophy in a way. I mean, you're going to be asking a lot more, in my opinion, you're going to be asking a lot more out of your defense because you're going to see, in a lot of ways, you're going to see them on the field a lot more than you normally would with the long sustained drives and what have you. You have that greatest show on turf thing like they had in the Rams, which is I think is basically the same thing Vermeil tried to instill with the Chiefs when he was there. You're going to ask the defense to play the majority of the game because your offense is going to put up points and get off the field. So you got to have a whole different.
The 2009 defense is probably the ideal defense Sean Payton wanted. That was a defense that forced, I think they scored 9 defensive touchdowns. They had forced, an ungodly amount of turnovers, 22 turnovers or something like that. And that was the kind of defense he wants. He wants a defense that's going to get to the quarterback, put the quarterback on his butt, and force turnovers to give his offense more opportunities to score more points. And you can't consistently manufacture something like that. The turnovers don't happen every year like they do. You're seeing that in Carolina this year. With Carolina, it was like plus 12 or plus 15 in turnovers. This year, they're -8 or -10, I think. And the ball doesn't always bounce that way. So I think, there is a disconnect on a defensive philosophy where, they don't have an idea of a consistent kind of pass rushing, stop the run kind of defense. They want a defense that makes impact of splash plays. So it's frustrating for Saints fans. It really is, because you feel like you're wasting all of Drew Brees' best years because he's got to throw for 450 yards and 4 touchdowns just to give you a chance to win.
Well, y'all did pick up somebody in the draft that I really liked. I was very, very high on Sheldon Rankins, and it looks like is he coming back to practice this week?
Yes, he came back to practice this week. He is on recallable IR, so he has to practice this week and next week, and then he can be active on the 3rd week. That's just the way it rolls.
Well, I think it gives you a nice interior push, and I'm glad the Chiefs aren't going to have to face him, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, we're really anxious about getting him back out there. Nick Fairley, a former #1 draft pick for the Lions, is actually playing pretty well in his spot as a 3 technique. So it's going to be interesting to see, when Rankins comes in, because Rankins can play end and defensive tackle, how they're going to put these two together on the field, because Fairley's probably the most productive defensive lineman on the team right now.
Without a doubt.
And he's lining up over guards?
I'm sorry, what?
And he's lining up over guards?
Yes, he's the 3 technique. So he comes in. He and Tyler Davidson are the two defensive tackles.
It's an interesting matchup. Chris will tell you all about the Kansas City starting guards, because that's going to be an interesting matchup.
What is the strength of your offense? The running game, obviously, but is it the offensive line that helps the running game, or is it the running backs, or what really is it that you would say is the strength of the offense?
It's the running backs. It's not the offensive line. I think the offensive line, they've been dealing with injuries, and they're trying to get to where they're more cohesive. But until they get to where they're playing 3 or 4 games in a row where it's the same offensive line, they're not going to have that cohesion. But it's very much so the running backs. Spencer Ware has been phenomenal. I think he's looked very good as a running back. And then you're just getting Jamal Charles back, and he hasn't really been that running back that's been that guy for over a year now almost. So it's going to be interesting to see how they get him involved in the game.
Yeah, I saw you guys just traded Niall Davis to the Packers. And it was basically he was just the odd man out. He was always either a healthy scratch or just wasn't used at all in the offense. So y'all are really deep at running back.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Should even Ware and Charles not be able to go, they've got a guy named Charkander Quest that can carry the rock just as well, and very, very productive when he's had a chance. And you really have a three-headed monster that they have the luxury of letting Charles work back into the lineup, not have to throw him in there unprotected. And like you saw against the Raiders last week, they can grind out yards.
What happens if y'all get into a shootout?
It's over.
I mean, you basically are relying on Alex Smith.
Just for clarification, are you talking about for the Chiefs or for the Saints?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm one of those guys that has a tendency to think that Alex Smith is underrated and is capable of more than he does, but I'll take Drew Brees in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that at all. I will say, if you look back at what Alex Smith was able to do in the second half against the Chargers in the first game of the year, if he could play that way all season, I think Kansas City goes to the Super Bowl, and I think they have a good chance to win. But he's not playing that way. He played one half that way. He played a pretty good game against the Raiders, and they really helped him with the scheme that they ran and the running plays that they had and in getting the different guys open and getting the running game going like they did. I think that really helped him. He's had good games against the Saints. So, I mean, there is that.
Well,
we don't talk about that on this show.
Okay, are you talking about the game against the Saints?
That game is off limits.
What, the game against the Saints in the playoffs? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh my God!
Yeah, that was.
Sorry, Sean. I couldn't resist, dude. You set it up.
Yeah, that game there.
Knock it out the park.
Would have been, if Roman Harper just breaks that ball a second earlier, it becomes the greatest game, arguably, in Saints history because, just that fourth quarter alone. But Harper does not get it. The 49ers do. And now that game looks like it's was the end of an era, and it just really, that's a painful game to watch.
This game comes up comparably often on this show as probably the worst loss in Saints history, number one. But like he said, number two, there's a lot of people that are right now with 7 and 9 seasons back to back and like 1 and 3, 1 and 4 starts beginning to be what we're seeing every year. People are pointing at that and saying that, like he just said, that was the end of the Saints quote unquote dynasty.
Well,
it was the end of an era. It was the end of an era. You just feel like they're not the same team they were back then. They had a swagger about that team. They had a
they still had Mills, right?
Had who?
Who was running middle linebacker for them at the time?
Oh, Vilma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vilma.
Sam Mills? No, Sam Mills would have been the 90s.
That was the 80s. Sorry, I'm showing my age again, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Don't Pro era.
Like 50.
We won the Super Bowl in 2009. But you ask any really true Saints fan, what was the greatest Saints team ever, and they'll tell you it was that 2011 team. It was head and shoulders above that 2009 team. More well-rounded by far.
Oh, they set so many records that year. It was unbelievable. You had Darren Sproles, you had Jimmy Graham, you had the offense was just a machine that year. And the defense played well enough. I mean, we destroyed the Colts, I think on Sunday Night Football, 62-7. Peyton Manning less Colts. That's the Colts team that ended up getting Andrew Luck. But, I mean, it was just that kind of thing. They were 8-0 at home. And, it was just – it was a fun team to watch.
To make matters worse, had we beat San Francisco that day, for you guys' benefit, had we beaten the Alex Smith-led San Francisco 49ers that day, as things turned out with the game that followed ours, we would have had the NFC Championship in the Superdome because whoever had home field advantage got beat.
Against the Giants. The Packers had home field advantage. Against the Giants, who we beat earlier that year, 49-27 or something unbelievable like that. It was like 49-14 until the last few minutes of the game when the Giants got some gimme points. So it was just, yeah, there was no doubt they were going to the Super Bowl. And again, talking about the Breeze legacy, you would have played New England. They probably would have beat New England just like the Giants did. And then Drew Brees would have beaten both Peyton Manning in the biggest game of their careers, the Super Bowl. Imagine what the legacy would have been like for Drew Brees then. Because right now he's kind of there's Drew Brees down there in New Orleans, but really it's all about Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. Those are the two quarterbacks. And then we'll throw Aaron Rodgers in there too, and Brees is kind of the Rodney Dangerfield of quarterbacks. He gets no respect whatsoever.
Well, since we don't have any representatives from the Packers, can I ask you guys, is it just me or is Aaron Rodgers playing like the village idiot right now?
Dude, don't even get me started. I've got him in both my fantasy leagues, and it's really killing me right now. I'm somehow in first place. Oh, actually, I know how I'm in first place. It's called David Johnson. That's the only reason I'm in first place. But, yeah, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the golf clap.
We're all very proud of you.
I'm just saying, Aaron Rodgers is killing me.
I watched that game Sunday when they played the Cowboys, and my top three teams in the NFC, as far as if you want to call it power ratings, whatever, it's just in my own little world. Right, the top three that I have in the NFC right now are Dallas, Minnesota, and maybe Philadelphia.
What the hell kind of world we living in with the Cowboys are in your top three? God.
Let's make that stop.
They're looking tough, man. They're looking tough. And if they do handle this quarterback situation correctly.
He froze. He freezes every so often. There we go.
In my humble opinion, there's no way that Jennings Kennedy that they've developed on the field, because if you do, you're a fool. You can't bench Dak in favor of Romo when he gets healthy. But I've felt all this time like, to control the narrative, so to speak, Jerry Jones being the type hands-on he is, you would just start hearing these random reports about how Romo was suffering setbacks in his rehab. And then
Jerry Jones wants to control stuff?
You're making
Get out of here.
I have a nephew that I love dearly, and he is as much as I am Saints, he is a die-hard Dallas Cowboys fan. And I can say that I don't hate Dallas, the Dallas Cowboys. There's a lot of players on that not all, but there's a lot of players on that team that I really, really respect, such as Witten, Dak, Elliott. I like all those guys. And I think that the combination of Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott are going to make them a force to be reckoned with this year.
They're going to go a good ways, I think. They've got a nice chemistry, but at the end of the day, they're still rookies. They're going to come up against a wall come the latter side of that season that's going to hurt.
Sooner or later, they're going to, especially Dak being in the quarterback position, the one that's paid the most attention to. He's going to have that game where either they're more prepared for him than he is them, or he's just going to play bad. It happens to everyone. But sooner or later, I'm afraid that game is going to come that he takes a step back. Now, I'd like to think that they wouldn't be so jaded as to seize upon that opportunity to yank him in favor of Romo, but, you never know.
Well, the thing with when you're talking about the Cowboys is if you look at their offensive line, I think that sets up their entire team. I think with the offensive line they have, you could put Dak in there. You could put almost, I'm not going to say any rookie QB, but any competent rookie QB in there, and he would look decent, if not semi-good. I'm not trying to take away from Dak. I'm just saying their offensive line really helps them, especially in having Ezekiel Elliott being able to run the ball really helps them as well.
Sure. Absolutely. That offensive line was built or for the most part was put together a few years ago to set up a wall in front of DeMarco Murray, and you saw what the result of that was. I mean, they were like one incomplete catch from being in the NFC Championship game that year. And but I think Alan and I agree on this. There's a difference in offensive linemen. You can have a running-based offensive line, or you can have a passing offensive line, but it doesn't always work out that you have both, because a lot of people have been talking about that with, well, how does Romo get injured behind the best offensive line in the game? Well, that offensive line was built to run the ball, not to stand up there and pass block for Tony Romo.
Right. I got to run McAfee through this computer. I can't believe we've been talking about the Dallas Cowboys. I feel like I got a virus on my computer. Listen,
I got sidetracked. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, apparently so. Apparently so. The damn Cowboys. Let me ask y'all. You know, you were talking about the weaknesses. Speaking of the offensive line, you talking about the weaknesses of the Kansas City offensive line. But what's the problem with the offensive line for the Chiefs?
Mostly, they're just young and inexperienced. They got a rookie starter on the left guard spot. They got a second-year player at center who's actually played very, very well at this point. He's having a little bit more trouble this season than last. They've got a bit of a journeyman over on the left tackle. Eric Fisher was a #1 draft pick, and he's had a long time coming. Some injuries held him back, and it's taken him a little bit of time to progress. They got a guy who's about to become a doctor playing right guard from Canada. So,
well, at least you know he's smart.
He does speak French for y'all like him, right?
Yeah, there you go.
He can get
you laugh at the Saints in the past. Jim Kovach, who was a linebacker in the late 70s and early 80s, he was studying to be a doctor as well, and he left the NFL to become a doctor. So, hey, I totally relate to that.
Well, and they picked up one of the best right tackles in the league in free agency. I don't know how the Browns actually let Mitchell Schwartz go, and I think he's taken some time to get acclimated, and I think the entire offensive line, like I said before, if they have a chance to gel, I think they'll be a lot better, but their main weakness is going to be left guard with Iyer. He just doesn't have the functional strength to be effective right now. He's a great technician, but he doesn't have the strength to be in that situation against massive defensive linemen.
Okay. And would you say that Spencer Ware's strength is running between the tackles or bouncing to the outside, or is he good at both?
You know, he can run anywhere, and he catches very, very well. He is an underrated pass catcher. I think week 1 he went for 139 yards in the air. So, I mean, I'm not going to compare him to Darren Sproles or anything, but you get some of that flavor that he can split out. They can run him or Charles out as wide receivers if they want to, and they're perfectly comfortable with it.
Okay.
Or they can throw to a guy like Don Terry Poe that's, you know, a 360 pound
yeah.
wide receiver. I mean,
get the fat guy.
By the way, you guys are welcome. Louisiana's yet their latest contribution to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Why, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
following in the tradition of the late great Joe Delaney.
Yeah. Spencer Ware, I think, shown that he has the ability to run in between the tackles, especially near the goal line. He's going to be a punishing back, so that's something that the defense needs to be aware of and be mindful of. I don't know what your guys' short yardage situation type defense when it comes to defending the run is like. I know your defense isn't great overall, but
it's a gift touchdown. It's a gift touchdown. It's a gift touchdown.
Okay.
Short yardage.
Okay.
Our short yardage game consists of a lot of prayer by the fan base.
Well, it's the I call it the Spanish defense. They do a little Olay move every so often and just let them go right through. So, but speaking of
it's
receivers,
kind of ironic that our short yardage package that consists of prayer usually ends in cursing, but you know.
Yeah.
It all depends on which Sunday.
Right, exactly. Speaking of receivers, Kansas City went for a while there where no receiver caught a touchdown pass, and that was a couple of years ago. I think they finally snapped that. what is the receiving core like? Is it still based mainly on short yardage? I mean, short crossing routes and underneath stuff, or do they have the speed now to stretch defenses?
Well, they definitely have the speed.
Unfortunately, both.
Oh, that's true. He's got a great point there. They have the speed to do any type of route that they really want to run, but they're not running them because it's a lot of different things. The offensive line hasn't given Alex enough time sometimes, and then Alex gets happy feet if he gets hit early. So if you can rattle him early, that's a big thing that New Orleans can take advantage of.
Well, I think that it's a good sign for the Saints that in the last two games, the San Diego game towards the end there, and also for the better part of the Carolina game, that we're starting to develop a bit of a pass rush with that front seven. They've been getting a little bit of pressure on the passer, better so than they were at the beginning of the season. And what was actually a few weeks ago a walking hospital ward of a defensive secondary, these kids have come along. I'm not going to say by any stretch of the imagination that they're top flight or that there's not improvements to be made on that defensive backfield, but they're playing well. You guys know from being fans of the history of the game, when you reach the point of the first week of the season and your depth is made up of undrafted free agents and rookies, then if in a worst case scenario, when those guys are pressed into surface, there's only one way that experience is going to come, and that's trial by fire. And that's been pretty much what the secondary for the Saints has faced this year. And they've taken their lumps, but they're in the past couple of games, they've really been playing a lot better, and they seem to be steadily improving. But, like as I said, by no means are they where they need to be for this team to be considered even remotely a contender. But they're steadily improving.
Well, I was going to ask you about the secondary in particular and what they plan to do to try and take away Travis Kelce, because he's a matchup nightmare against linebackers and safeties. And given the inexperience, what do you think they try to do?
Well, it was funny when you all were talking about the three safety set. That's exactly what the Saints run. They run a lot of three safety sets where they have Kenny Vaccaro come down either in the box or he covers receivers because he can both cover and hit. I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think you're going to see them try and roll coverage towards Kelce's side. They will have Vaccaro come down and try and cover him. Craig Robertson, linebacker that the Saints have, is somebody else who's pretty good at covering receivers and covering tight ends. So, they'll try some combination stuff. I think you'll see a lot of blitzing though early on Alex Smith to try and both stop the run and to put some hits on Smith. Try and get him a little rattled, not trust his first read and kind of throw it to a check down where they can just kind of contain the Chiefs' offense. They play very much a bend, don't break kind of defense. So I think you're going to see some of that this weekend.
What's your corner speed like? Sorry, I just had one quick question. What's your corner speed like?
Yeah, no.
You're talking about on the field, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
They're actually, I have to give these guys credits. B.W. Webb played a good game this past Sunday, and he was somebody the Saints just signed 3 weeks ago. Spencer Moore got hurt Sunday, but he's been pretty solid. Ken Crawley, who is an undrafted free agent, he's probably been out there the most. He makes his mistakes, but he's usually in good position. It's just a challenge.
As a matter of fact, Sterling Moore got that pick Sunday against Cam.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really a lack of talent more than speed. It's just they get themselves in the proper position. They're just not making the plays they need to make. So, they can match up. It's just a question of whether or not they're going to make any plays this weekend.
Well,
So I'm not sure.
The reason I'm asking the question is the Chiefs have a player in Tyreek Hill who's probably one of the fastest players in the NFL, and they've started to throw the ball deep to him, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a deep shot or two on Sunday to him, and maybe even to Jeremy Maclin and Chris Conley. I mean, they're getting their shots, and the nice thing about that with Smith is Smith can take a 3 or 5 step drop and just let a ball fly 40 yards, and Tyreek Hill will be there. I mean, that's the kind of speed the kid has, so that'll be interesting to me to watch.
Yeah, we have something just like that over in New Orleans with Brandon Cooks. We like to do that 9 route where he just, he runs down the sideline on a double move and then he's gone. And
ask the Raiders.
Yeah, the Raiders and the Panthers both. I mean, he scored a 98-yard touchdown on first down. Breeze just dropped back from in his own end zone and threw it, and I think Sean Smith of the Raiders is still putting out the flames after that one, and he did the same thing to the Panthers, another 87-yard touchdown. So they're not afraid to take their shots, that's for sure. And this could end up being a shootout, especially if the Saints are able to get up on the Chiefs early, which I don't know if that'll happen in Arrowhead. What would be y'all's prediction then on Sunday? This is not a team that y'all usually see, obviously, so that's why I was asking so many questions, trying to get a feel for the Chiefs. What kind of game do you see happening? What would be a final score prediction?
I'm going to have to take the Chiefs at home, and I'm going to go 31-24. Especially if the defenses go the way we think they are, I think they'll get there. But the Chiefs have been able to put up a lot of points on some fairly susceptible defenses, just like last week at 26, and I think they have a little bit more in them.
I'm going to go Kansas City. I'm going to say 27-24. I think that they're going to be having to really play their brand of ball, and they need to be running the ball. And I think if they're able to do that and only get Drew Brees, 5 or 6 drives a half, or 5 or 6 drives maybe throughout most of the game, I think they'll be in a good position to where Kansas City can win.
Okay.
Now, what do y'all think?
I knew he was going to ask that.
Nobody gets out free.
Now last week they asked me my prediction, and I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh man, I suck at this." And I predicted that we'd score 42 points, and we scored 41.
Yeah, he was pretty damn close. He was pretty damn close. I'm gonna have to go.
Tradition dictates that you quit while you're ahead.
That's right. I'm gonna have to go with the Chiefs as well because they're in Arrowhead, not in New Orleans, not in the Dome. I don't know what the weather's gonna be like on Sunday. I know last week, the Chiefs really it was their kind of weather, their kind of game where they could just run the ball. I don't know if they'll be able to do the same thing this week. But with the defense being what it is and the Saints really being predicated on throwing the ball, and I think that's probably going to be the Chiefs' strength is pass defense, I'm going to have to say 31-20, something like that, Chiefs in Arrowhead. How about you, Sean?
Gonna leave me out there swinging in the wind like that, aren't you?
That's right.
Well, somebody's got to take a hit for the team, so obviously that's going to have to be me.
Why do I have a feeling that's not the first time you've taken a hit for the team?
Absolutely.
Well, my code name in this particular aspect of the show is Bend Over. In all seriousness, I heard today, for example, that the Chiefs that we'll be facing are quite comparable to what we saw with the New York Giants. We played good with that team. I would probably give the quarterback edge in that comparison to the Giants, Eli over Alex. But all things considered, I think that the Saints will, if they do what they're supposed to do, obviously, and they handle their business, they can play with these guys. If they don't, this could be a really long afternoon. And I'm going to say I'm going to take Chris's score, 27-24, but I'm going to go Saints.
I personally hope it's a long afternoon for you.
I have enough of those. I don't need another long afternoon.
That's something that we have in common because I wish the same for you, my brother.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate you coming in.
Guys, if you would, starting with you, Chris, let everyone know how they can keep up with your work, please.
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Clark NFL. I am, like Sean said before, I'm a co-host of the Locked On Chiefs podcast, and we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you guys for having us very much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, bro.
Yeah,
thank you.
This is a great time. I appreciate it as well. And, we're going to keep it rolling. We'll have you guys on as soon as we can next time. We do have an episode coming up I wanted to share with you because we're talking to our old buddy, Herbie Tiopi, who's writing for the Times-Picayune now. He just left. Yeah, he just left during training camp, and we got him on for Thursday. So it'll be a good episode. And you guys keep doing what you're doing. I love watching it. So thank you.
Thank you
Ryan,
very
how can
much.
they find you?
And
you can find me.
And I want to take
I'm Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter too. I just stole Chris's idea.
You're welcome.
And I want to. I want to take this moment to thank you guys first of all for being on the show. It means a lot to us when guests come on. I like you guys' work, and personally, I want to take an opportunity once again to thank you guys for the inspiration and the guidance and everything that you provided me when I started with PFS. You've definitely been an influence in an industry where that's not always the easiest thing to find. And you guys were a couple of guys that crossed my path that left nothing but positivity in your wake. And I certainly appreciate that.
I think we're both lucky for it. You took the ball and run, so you just keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
Appreciate it. Just do me a favor and don't take typing lessons from Ryan.
No, I'm terrible. I'm much better with a microphone than a keyboard.
Yeah. I hear you. I'm a lot like that too, and I write a lot too. So believe me, I do a lot of history stuff for the Saints.
You guys are also available on iTunes, correct?
Yep, we're on iTunes, Stitcher, the whole 9 yards. We're off the Audio Boom platform, so you can find us there too. It's probably the easiest place to subscribe. But just do a Google search for Locked On Chiefs, and you can find us real simple.
And anytime you go on iTunes for these guys, give them a rating. That helps them out.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll keep spreading the word for you guys too. This show's great. You guys keep it up.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you guys for coming on.
Sure thing. Anytime.
All righty. All right, Sean. We have about 10 minutes left. We can do a quick review of the Panthers game, and then kind of talk a little bit of some of the other stuff you had on the chart here. Basically, Panthers game, that's kind of been rehashed pretty good. We just basically can say, you're starting to see the offense come along. You're starting to see actually the defense, despite giving up 21 points, and 3 of them really were the result of pass interference calls that gave the Panthers the ball on the 1 yard line. You're starting to see some of the defense starting to show up and starting to make those steps towards improvement. Not fast enough.
Let me ask you a question, Alan. Now, and the reason that I ask this is I'm getting this question a lot, and I want to see if my answer kind of G-hosses basically with yours as well. I've heard a lot. On one hand, I've heard a lot of people that are on one particular bandwagon where they're saying, well, here we go again. The defense gave up the game and made it to – it should have been a blowout. Then there's another school of thought that's starting to gain a little momentum there where, hey, don't hang this on the defense, because the offense is just as much to blame for not doing enough to get this team to a win. Just a quick example. The Hills penalties down by the goal line that cost us one drive. You're throwing 3 incomplete passes and putting the defense that's already played an entire game back out on the field. Is this offense doing enough to win the game? Not just throwing for touchdowns and running, all that. Are they doing enough in the quote unquote the team effort to secure a win?
Well, excuse me again. I'm sorry, I'm fighting a cold here. You can say on the one hand, you scored 41 points. The offense should have done enough to win the ball game. But at the same time, I know where they're getting at. Ball enough. One of the problems that we saw, and I keep telling people this over and over when they start trumpeting Mark Ingram, we're not getting the tough yards inside. Ingram will get the occasional 5-7 yard run or a big run, but on obvious running situations, we're not getting those 3 and 4 yards that we need to get when they have the box stacked and we're getting open. He has to get those positive plays. So now it's 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 4. We're not getting those kind of things consistently enough. And when we're not getting them, Sean Payton now loses confidence in the running game. And we have to sort of scheme our way into a running play. And you saw that with the jet sweep to Fleener on the first touchdown. You see that with the bubble screens and so forth. And yeah, I can think of 2 series in particular that the offense did not play very well. The Tony Hills screws up in the third quarter, and near the end of the first half, when the Panthers ended up getting a touchdown after this, was a series where the Saints went 3 and out and gave the ball back to the Panthers, and they were able to go down and get 10. Those kind of mistakes are what's hurting us. So you can say the offense isn't doing their job. I think injuries play a role in the changing. When Pete went out and Hills comes in,
sure, yeah,
as the left tackle. I think when Moore went out with an injury and Brian Dixon came in, you saw the Panthers notice that immediately and target Brian Dixon mercilessly. That last touchdown was basically on Brian Dixon. That last pass interference call, was on Brian Dixon.
Well, another thing that I don't think is getting – this is going to sound sort of homerish and jaded. Another thing that I don't believe is getting the proper amount of attention is the fact that we had a 21-point lead. And I got to be careful how I say this so that Roger Goodell doesn't find me. A questionable pass interference call.
It was a horrible call. It was a horrible call.
Yeah, well,
you can say that.
I'll send Roger to you. But I mean, a questionable call that gives them 1st and goal at the 2-yard line.
Yeah.
Now the one on Sterling Moore, he had
he got beat. He got beat. So he did what you had to do when you get beat. You just grab the guy rather than give up the easy touchdown. You
either do that or you give up an uncontested catch for 6 points. Now there's always the chance if you do that, if you do the pass interference, you make that choice. There's always the chance that your defense stops them. You give up an uncontested touchdown, and all bets are off.
Yeah,
but I mean, there's 14 of those points right there.
Right. Well, looking back at the game, I think the officials treated the Kenny Vaccaro as a quote unquote makeup call because what was it? I think it was like 5 plays earlier, maybe 3 plays earlier. They had the Ken Crawley obvious pass interference, and because he was face guarding the guy, he didn't even turn around. and they didn't call anything. But here's my issue with that, and I talked a little bit about this after the game. My issue with that is, okay, you're going to do a makeup call. You pick that moment to do the makeup call. That was a critical moment in the game. The pass interference rules, and I've said this forever, and I really, I understand the argument why it's the way it is, but I don't like it. Pass interference is the worst penalty in the NFL because it's always the spot of the foul. So it can be a 5-yard penalty. It can be a 30-yard penalty. It can be a 50-yard penalty. If you're a good quarterback, just throw it up and see what happens.
You take the weakest link in the secondary, and all of a sudden, pass interference becomes a play in the playbook. To quote Gus Cattingill.
Well, you see guys, quarterbacks deliberately try that to see if they can get the big pass interference call to help out a drive. And I've always wanted to go back to being a 15-yard penalty like it is in college. And the argument against that is at the NFL level, you're going to see guys committing pass interference all the time because, again, like you said earlier, it's easier to contest a catch that way and make them earn it than it is to give up a big play. So they look at it as not giving up a big play. They're going to commit the pass interference early enough. Hopefully it's not that big of a yardage deal. But my problem with that is pass interference is a judgment call. Okay? They'll say
that another thing that we've heard all week is the thing from the Sean Payton conference call that he said he would love to see pass interference be able to be a reviewable call. And see, I don't think that that's going to be able to work because you're not changing the rule. It's still going to be a judgment call. You're not improving the process by doing that.
Right. And now if you start challenging penalties, you're now getting into the area where now officials are going to probably be intimidated to make the call. So you're going to have a lot of no calls, and what you basically saw at the end of the Seattle-Atlanta game. They made a no call on that one. I don't think they're going to ever allow them to challenge because it takes the power out of the officials' hands, and they have a hard enough time with reviewable plays. I'll be shocked if they have that.
It just opens the floodgates for so much more that seems insignificant at this point, but could be major in the grand scheme of things. Like you said, you start reviewing penalties, and you just take the referees off the field.
Right. Are you going to start reviewing holding calls now? Are you going to start reviewing, roughing the quarterback calls? Yeah. Well, was it really roughing? He kind of grazed the helmet, So, I mean, it gets to that point.
I don't like the level that the officiating, and I'm getting into my extra point here. I don't like the level that the officiating is at. I really don't. I think that in a lot of ways, there's absolutely no consistency whatsoever.
No, there isn't.
I think that we saw an excellent example of that with the Saints-Panthers game Sunday. And I say that just as much in favor of the Saints as I do in favor of the Panthers, because it went both ways. There was no consistency whatsoever.
No, there's not. And, that unfortunately we're up against the clock too. But, that has been a problem. And I think that's part of the reason why television viewership is down this year in the NFL, because you're seeing a diluted product and you're seeing poor officiating. So it's not just this game. It was the Atlanta-Seattle game. You see it in a lot of games that goes on. And a few years ago, and this goes back a little ways, and then we're going to have to wrap it up, it goes back to the strike year for the officials. The league made a decision. They wanted to integrate with all new officials, and they've put a lot of younger guys in and a lot of new officials in now, and I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing such poorly officiated games. These guys do not have the experience, and the game is so fast that they're not making the consistent calls that we're used to seeing when you had, the guys that are now doing all the shows, the Mike Pereiras and the I can't think of the other guys' names. Mike Carey and the other and Arton, Otan or Arton. Yeah. So anyway, we went a little long tonight because we had a guest. We had two guests on the Kansas City Chiefs.
I would like to
extra points thing.
I would like to if I can find my notes. Anyway, I want to announce now that we will be having a guest next week.
Good deal.
Who's the team we play next?
I think we play Seattle next, and then we play. I was just looking to see. We play the 49ers, the Broncos, and the 49ers next after that. So
okay.
Yeah, we've got a heck of a slate coming up here.
Yeah, this is the gauntlet for sure.
Yeah.
Next week for the Seattle Seahawks, we will have Zachary Vetch on with us. The following week for the San Francisco 49ers, we will have a special guest, Mitchell Blayhut. And both of those guys write for PFS. You get a chance to check them out. They're pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had it reversed. We played the 49ers, then the Broncos, because after the Broncos game, we had the rematch of the Panthers and the Rams. We actually we host Los Angeles Rams. So, yeah, this is going to be a tough stretch here. This could, you're trying to get back to 500. I don't know if we're going to do it this week. You already heard my prediction. I have a feeling we're going to lose this one on Sunday. And then
I don't like the fact that we're on the road.
Yeah.
Trying to get back to 500. I can see it really going either way. I don't think, in all honesty, I really don't want to say that Kansas City is nearly the overwhelming favorite that we thought they would be at the beginning of the season. But at the same time, they're a very, very good football team. And of these 6 games here during this quote-unquote gauntlet period that I keep referring to, I think that Kansas City will probably be the most talented team in that stretch.
You're playing in Arrowhead. They're a very tough venue to beat them, even if we're fully healthy. They're very tough to beat there. And then if the weather is right for running, that plays to Kansas City's strength. If it's another mosh pit with a lot of rain and so forth. So, but anyway, thank you guys for watching. Like we said, we're going to get more guests on, try and make this a little more interesting, to get a good perspective, get a good feel for the other team. The Chiefs this week. Then we have Seattle next week. That's supposed to be a revenge game. Who knows how that game's going to play out. Sheldon Rankins, there'll be one more week before he comes back. He'll be back for the 49ers game if all is on schedule. Delvin Breaux may be back by the Panthers game if we're lucky. He's about a week behind, and he's not on recallable IR, so we could see Delvin Breaux back by the Panthers game. That would be great to see.
And despite popular belief, we are not going to start Tony Romo in place of Drew Brees.
I'm definitely running friggin' McAfee on this thing after I hear all this Cowboys talk. My God. All right. Thank you guys again for joining us. Follow us on iTunes. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, Under the Dome. You can catch us on the New Orleans Saints Facebook group. You can catch us on the Under the Dome group. I'm 79 Saints on Twitter. What's that on? Are you on Twitter?
Yes, you can. I tweet from the show Twitter account, which is Under the Dome PO1, and I also have my personal account, which is at Drew's Dad 3721. You guys give us a follow. You didn't like to expect, and who dat, baby.
Thank you, guys. Good night.